What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video I'm going to try and figure out the Pokemon from Generation 1 that has been shown the least amount of love, as well as the Pokemon from Generation 1 that got the most amount of love. And before we go into all that, I'm just going to go a little bit of a backstory, just kind of like a little Gen 1 recap. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into this. Generation 1 started off with the release of Red and Green in Japan in February of 1996, and Blue would later come out in America in October of later that year. Pokemon Red and Blue reached North America of September 1998, Australia in October, and then Europe in October of 1999. Then we also got the release of Pokemon Yellow version, which was released between 1998 and 1999 pretty much everywhere. These games would also have re-releases that would come out on Virtual Console in 2016, along with the Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee games, which were remakes of this, but they included Mega Evolution. And I'll get further up into those releases as we get more to that point in those generations. So all of these games take place in the Kanto region, giving us our very first look at the Pokemon world. So these games gave us the original 150 Pokemon, as well as one mythical, that being Mew, but we'll get to him a little bit later on in this video. These region would also give us our first evil team in Team Rocket, and leading Team Rocket was none other than the Viridian City Gym Leader, Giovanni. And now, Team Rocket is probably, I think, one of the more evil teams before we switched it over, with their goal being to obtain powerful Pokemon by any means necessary and then use them to essentially take over the world. One of the few teams that has truly global domination in their outlooks for what the evil team wants to do. Now, this generation would also give us our first set of 8 gym leaders, those gym leaders being the Rock-type gym leader Brock, and he would give you the Boulder Badge. The Water-type gym leader Misty, and she would give you the Cascade Badge. The Electric-type gym leader Lieutenant Surge, who would give you the Thunder Badge. The Grass-type gym leader Erica, which would give you the Rainbow Badge. The Poison gym leader Yoga, giving you the Soul Badge. The Psychic gym leader Sabrina, giving you the Marsh Badge. The Fire gym leader Blaine, giving you the Volcano Badge. As we already said, the final gym leader being Giovanni. He is a ground type trainer and he gives you the Earth Badge. Now, Yellow version would do pretty much the same basic layout. You get the same badges. However, the teams, as you can see here, were switched to kind of reflect the anime more, because that's sort of what was going on with the idea behind Yellow. Yellow was pretty much the same game, except you started with Pikachu, and it gives you the opportunity to get all of the starters, and thus the kind of changed up the gym leaders a little bit to kind of follow along the anime just a little bit more. Now, what this generation also gave us, or was our first foray into the Elite Four, the strongest trainers of any region, kind of like the end-all challenge for what you have to go through in the game. So the Generation 1 Elite Four, we have Lorelei, the Water and Ice type Elite Four. We've got Bruno, the Rock and Fighting type Elite Four. We've got Agatha, a Poison Ghost type Elite Four member. And then we have Lance, a Dragon-type trainer, and even though Dragon was not very common in Generation 1. And it also gives us our first champion, that being your rival, in this case, Blue, or whatever you decided to name him. Now, Blue doesn't really have a specific team. You kind of see him build his team as the game goes on. In these particular games, he would have Pidgeot, Alakazam, Rhydon, Arcanine, Gyarados, and the starter that would have the advantage over yours at the beginning of the game that he chose. So if you chose Charmander, he would choose Squirtle. If you chose Bulbasaur, he would choose Charmander, and if you chose Squirtle, he would choose Bulbasaur. And then he would get the final evolution of that. Now, since this is all Generation 1, no new types were actually added to this game, because technically they were all new types. As well as Gen 1 really doesn't have any gimmicks, because this was the first set of games, so there weren't any gimmicks that would come out, and there weren't really any changes. This is the base game that all the rest of the games have been built upon. This game also gave us our first introduction to the legendary Pokemon. This generation's legendaries being the Flying Ice type Pokemon Articuno, the Electric Flying type Pokemon Zapdos, the Fire Flying type Moltres, and then the Psychic type Pokemon Mewtwo. And Mewtwo is actually special amongst legendaries, whereas he is the first legendary that is created by the evil team, with the only exception to that being Genesect and kind of some fusions later on down the line, but we'll kind of get to those in those videos. And this game also gave us our first mythical Pokemon, eventually being Mew. And Mew is actually Pokemon number 151, bringing the Kanto Dex up to 151, though you could not actually legitimately obtain Mew in the base game. Mew was an event Pokemon, which kind of started the trend of most mythical Pokemon being event-only exclusives. And now that has been kind of retconned throughout the years. The mythicals aren't quite as hard. You don't have to show up to certain events to get them. But Mew did start the trend of being, hey, we have a mythical Pokemon, let's just put out an event and maybe tie them into a movie and that'll kind of, it basically bolstered everything that they had. Now, like I said, I'm going to go more in-depth into the remakes of each generation as I come to them in their own generations. I think that's just an easier way to do it, because the Gen 2 remakes were brought about in Generation 4, I think, so it's probably better. They are technically Gen 4 games, so I'm just going to go over them as we get to that in depth. But the remakes for Gen 1 are Fire Red and Leaf Green being released in 2004 as part of Generation 3, and then Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee in 2018 as part of Generation 7. So then, but now we can get into what you guys are all here for, okay? And that is what Pokemon has been shown the least amount of love, or the most forgotten Pokemon of Generation 1, as well as I'm going to go over what Pokemon has been shown the most love within Generation 1. So my criteria for this was simple. They can't have been given any new gimmicks, evolutions, or types. And if that doesn't break it down far enough, they can't have been included on any major trainers team within this generation of games. Now, they might be used in separate generation of games, but I just kind of thought keeping it to the list to the generation that they were introduced in, it's just kind of like an easier, more fun way to figure this out. And then if all of that still doesn't come down, then I'm going to jump to the anime, and it's going to come down to the most appearances left in the anime of that given Pokemon. Now, most of the Pokemon Gen 1 really do kind of just fall out. Gen 1 love is real, and it's really easy for Generation 1 Pokemon to be shown a large amount of love. As we can go down this list, most of the Pokemon that have an X next to them have had some kind of a gimmick or a new type or something like that given to them in the past. And I had knocked down quite a bit of Generation 1 Pokemon just using this simple method. Now, that didn't eliminate all of them. And something I forgot to mention also is I used game appearances, how many generations they are actually available in. So bringing all of that together, it actually led me to these two Pokemon. It was really close between Paris and, believe it or not, Spearow. And this actually came down to a phenomenally close tie, actually bringing it all the way into anime appearances, where essentially Spearow and Fearow trumped Paris and Parasect. Believe it or not, Paris is the worst Pokemon, or the most forgotten about Pokemon from Generation 1. And I say that reluctantly, seeing as they made Paris one of the worst Pokemon to deal with in Legends Arceus, basically making him one of the most aggressive Pokemon in that game. And it actually got me thinking, I already knew that, and it's weird that my scale actually matched up, but the Super Carlin brothers actually did an entire video on this, and they also came down to Paris. So please, I'm going to link their video in the description down below, and you guys should go over there and watch that and show those guys some love on that video. Now, what this does, however, bring me into is the Pokemon with the most gimmicks and the most love being shown to it. So the most evolutions, the new types, and all of this stuff. And believe it or not, in Generation 1, it wasn't who you thought it was. I thought it was going to be Pikachu. I thought it was going to be Charizard. But it was actually Eevee. Believe it or not, Eevee has had the most love shown to it throughout the entirety of Generation 1. And I say that because Eevee has gotten multiple evolutions, that being he is the evolution Pokemon, but not counting the 3 from Generation 1. He got 2 new evolutions in Generation 2, 2 new evolutions in Generation 4, and then 1 new evolution in Generation 6 for the introduction of the Fairy type. Eevee has also gotten a signature Z move as well as a Gigantamax, and it was featured on the box art of a game. So Eevee and Pikachu were basically kind of neck and neck, but when it came down to the evolutions, that's where Eevee just kind of took it by storm. Pikachu has only gotten a new evolution in Pichu and Alola Raichu. It has not gotten a new type. It did get a signature Z move, as well as Raichu did, but it also did get a Gigantamax, but that brings it, and it was on box art for 2 games. But I didn't really count the box arts in this because that's, they're just on the cover. I could have given that to Charizard and Venusaur and Blastoise as well. But honestly, when it comes down to it, Eevee is the Pokemon from Generation 1 that has been shown the most love. Now, I know this was pretty much what you guys are waiting for, and I just want to say thank you guys for basically, toughing this whole thing out with me. This is my first video like this, so any improvements I can make on this, please let me know in the comments section down below. It's not a very long video, but it was a lot of fun for me to look all of this up. Generation 2 will be coming out soon, and I'm just going to go through all the games to where it makes sense. I will go over Gen 9, but Gen 9 is the newest generation as of recording this video. So that's not really going to be all that hard to kind of disseminate things. Most of it's just going to come down to these are all new Pokemon. But hey, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Where would you guys like for me to dive further? Are you guys surprised by the most forgotten about and the Pokemon that gotten the most love? And while you're down there dropping those comments, guys, please remember to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you never miss another video from me, and I will see you guys in the next video.